All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakah Kodash, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of JMS Great Millstone, and a sincere Shalom to Yakim, bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. And as you see, Lord willing, this lesson will be the significance and or the parallels of Babylon to and we pronounce it, Tyre, Tyre, and it is pronounced Tyre, man. Now I want to get into this chapter here, Isaiah the 23rd chapter, which as you see here, it says a fall or the fall of Tyre, right? The fall of Tyre. It says a message about them. And I'll start at the top. But the point I want to grab is coming down into like the 7th, 8th verse, right? So it reads, it says, the burden of Tyre, how ye ships of Tarshish, for it is laid waste, so that there is no house, no entering in. From the land of Chittim it is revealed to them. Be still, ye inhabitants of the isle, thou whom the merchants of Zidon that pass over thee have replenished. And by great waters the seed of Sihor, the harvest of a river, is her revenue, and she is a mart of nations. Right now, the point is, let's actually go into this word Tyre, right? Because it's a Phoenician city, right? 868, 65, right? The word is pronounced Tyre, right? Tyre or Zidon says, or Tyrus, a Phoenician city on the Mediterranean coast, showing you that if cities, inhabited cities, that were on the coast, they tended to be what? Great marketplaces because they were port cities, right? And ultimately, port cities bring forth what? Commerce. Commerce from where? From imports and or exports, right? And understanding that Babylon is a place full of merchandise, right? Land or country, I should say, that is heavily funded or a heavy marketplace for what? For imports and exports. Really, very much so. Things that are imported here rather than exported out of here, right? This is our Revelation 18 chapter, and I'll start here at the 10th verse. We understand this speaking about the destruction of Babylon the Great, also known as America. It says, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city of Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, right? And these are all the merchandise of Babylon, and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet, and all thine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of most precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble, and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil, and fine flour and wheat and beast, and sheep and horses, and chariots and slaves and souls of men, right? And when we keep reading, it says, the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all, right? Because ultimately, and when this place be destroyed, all these different exports and or imports into Babylon, it'll mean nothing because it'll be burnt up, right? It says, and the merchants of these things, right, the people who brought forth those ships unto Babylon, which were made rich by her, right, made rich through her what? Her imports, her commerce, shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing and saying, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, right? Showing Babylon to be a place that was waxed rich, right? A place of quote unquote dignity, right? When you take a look at purple and you go into the color psychology of purple and scarlet, purple is a royal color, man, right? Matter of fact, let's just show it purple psychology. Yeah. Right here it says purple sky psychology. Right here it says purple is often associated with royalty because the dye used to make it was rare and expensive, right? The connection of purple to royalty and nobility imbues it with sense of luxury and exclusivity, right? So showing you that this is how Babylon was looked at to the world, man. A place of luxury, a place full of milk and honey, a place of opportunity, a place to wax rich. You know, nations could come over here and gain money for their families, send it back out, or build up their wealth here, quote unquote. Right, scarlet. This goes into also the blood that was shed here. Right, it says, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour, so great riches has come to naught, showing you that those riches absolutely mean nothing, right? Because these riches were gotten by what? Murder, gotten by deceit, gotten by bloodshed, right? Gotten by witchcraft. For in 1 hour, so great riches has come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city, right? So understanding when we go into the book of Revelation 11 and 18, it speaks about a Babylon or America spiritually Sodom and Egypt. Well, we could say America is also spiritually Tyre or Tyre, man, right? Tyre, Tyrus, right? So when we go back here into the book of Isaiah, the 23rd chapter, 1 second, it's loading. Right, it says, be still, ye inhabitants of the isle. Right, when we read this in the NLT, it says, mourn in silence, you people of the coast, you merchants of Sidon, your traders cross the sea. Let's go into this word Zidon. H6721 says Zidon, right, meaning hunting, an ancient Phoenician city on Mediterranean coast north of Tyre. Right here it says the name of the son of Canaan, place of Palestine. H6679 says to hunt eagerly or keenly, to take provision, to chase, victuals for a journey. All right, so let's go back. Verse 3 says, your traders crossed the sea, sailing over deep waters. They brought you grain from Egypt and harvest from along the Nile. You were the marketplace of the world. Right, so what I did was I went to chat, because we understand the huge marketplace here, Wall Street, right, is in Babylon the Great. So one thing I did here is I basically typed into chat, what are the parallels to America of Tyre or Tyre, right? It says many people draw parallels between ancient Tyre and modern nations, including the U.S., but these comparisons and interpretations, rather than direct biblical identifications, the Bible does not say America's Tyre, right? Hey, but by this same, response, what they could say, the Bible does not say America is spiritually Sodom and Egypt, right? Because they can't understand this link, right? Esau's in the spiritual man, so he can't understand or tell or type in this algorithm to say that Babylon, ancient Babylon, is America, or it's like it, not ancient Babylon, to say that Babylon is spiritually Sodom and Egypt, man, right? Ancient Tyre, a major center of international trade, right? And how do you see it in America? One of the world's largest economies and trading powers, right? Wealth accumulated through commerce there in ancient Tyre. Says significant wealth generated through finance, technology, trade, and industry. Maritime influence, how it's likened to America. Global naval presence and control of major sea lanes, right? The cultural influence beyond its borders in Tyre, it says in Babylon, modern day America, strong influence through media, entertainment, technology, and business, which is what? The image of the beast. These are all parts of the image of the beast. Right? It says condemned for what? For pride and self-confidence. Critics argue America can exhibit national pride or overconfidence. And we're gonna grab that as well. Right? So when we go back here, it's like you couldn't see it. I'll just share it really quick. Right? Okay, now let me get back to this. Isaiah 23:3, it says, sailing over deep waters, they brought you grain from Egypt and harvest from the Nile. You were the marketplace of the world, right? Matter of fact, one second. Here we go. One thing I typed in is America, the marketplace of the world. Yes, economically, the United States remains the closest equivalent to the marketplace of the world. With the GDP, GDP over $32 trillion. And as the single largest consumer market, it commands the highest global purchasing power. The US functions as the epicenter of global commerce for several key reasons. Ultimate consumer market, accounting for roughly a quarter of global economic output, the US represents around 30% of global consumer spending despite having only about 4.2% of the world's population. High disposable incomes makes the US the most lucrative target market for global exporters. The US dollar remains the world's foremost reserve currency, right? The petrodollar, meaning the vast majority of international trade, commodities, and debt are priced and settled in what? USD. Innovation and finance hub. Wall Street acts as the financial engine, allocating global capital, while US-based tech and entertainment businesses deeply penetrate every global market, right? So you see these same parallels being shown from ancient Tyre to modern day Babylon, which is America, right? So when we go back here, it says, selling over deep waters, they brought you grain from Egypt and harvest from along the Nile. You were the marketplace of the world, right? Being that coastal city. But now you are put to shame, city of Zidon. For Tyre, the fortress of the sea says, now I am childless. I have no sons and daughters. Now keep in mind, one thing that was occurring during this time, and the prophecy, I believe it gets into it later, but basically, it was prophesied that they would have 70 years of desolation, right? Ultimately, we understand they got overtaken, but nevertheless, it's a lot that comes with the history of Tyre and Zidon, man. Right? One nickname that they called Tyre is the Babylon of the sea. Matter of fact, let's prove that. Ancient nickname of Queen of the Seas, Mistress of the Seas, right? There's another one. It should say Babylon of the Sea. Right? Now it says it didn't have a formal nickname like Babylon of the Sea. Instead, the phrase comes from a famous biblical metaphor in the book of Ezekiel. The prophet, compared the wealthy ocean straddling and high prosperous island city of Tyre to a magnificent merchant ship. The description of Tyre as a powerful sea-based center of wealth and commerce closely parallels the imagery of Babylon. While not a literal nickname, Ezekiel 27 frequently uses language that alludes to the grandeur and maritime dominance of the Phoenician metropolis, like it. But Queen of the Seas, right? That shows you right there, because does not the scriptures, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna grab this really quick. Does not the scripture say this in the book of oops, it is, shall see no sorrow. 1 second. Grabbing this precept here. Right, we read in Revelation 18, so like it, that's where it was at. Back to Revelation 18 and 7. Yeah, this is Revelation 18 and 7. Right, I read further down, but this was the verse here. It says, how much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her, for she said in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. Now when we read this in the NLT, it says she glorified herself and lived luxury. So match it now with torment and sorrow. She boasted in her heart, going back to that pride, right? Even when we go back into Obadiah 1, understanding that's representing Esau, Edom, right? It says, I am a queen on my throne. I am no helpless widow, and I have no reason to mourn. So when we go back here to Isaiah 23, right? And going back to that nickname, right? The Queen of the Seas or the Babylon of the Seas, right? Oops, Slovakia. Going back here. It says, but now you are put to shame of Zidon for Tyre. The fortress of the sea says, now I am childless, I have no sons or daughters. When Egypt hears the news about Tyre, they will be great sorrow. Send now to Tarshish, wail you people who live in distant lands. Is this silent ruin all that is left of your once joyous city? And we understand that what? That ruin, right, that occurred can also be likened unto the ruin or the desolation that will be left upon Babylon the Great. When the scriptures say this place shall be left for desert creatures, right? Well, that's the future judgment, right? It says, what a long history was yours, right? That was the time of her ruling. Ultimately, we understand that Esau, Edom has been in power, and Yahweh Shema Shah has allowed this kingdom to rule for a certain number of time and certain length of years, right? It says, what a long history was yours. Much like when we go into the book of Job, and it says, the eyes that saw him shall see him no more, right? It says, think of all the colonists you sent to distant places. And we understand the mother country of this place being what? England, right? They sent forth what? All those different conquistadors, Spain, England, the French, or the Spanish, the French, the English. They sent all their different colonists, right? All their different conquerors to come and take over the Americas or to inhabit the Americas, which they end up taking it over by what? Raping, robbing, and murdering. It says, who has brought this disaster on Tyre? And who brought the disaster upon Tyre, man? Well, let's grab a precept for it. 1 second. This is coming from the book of Amos 3. It's Amos 3 and verse 6. It says, shall a trumpet be blown in the city and the people not be afraid? Shall there be evil in the city and the Lord hath not done it? So what? Yahweh Shema Shai wants his credit for overthrowing this land, right? Every captivity that has fallen, hey, Yahweh Shema Shai has to get the credit, man, right? It says, is the silent ruin all that is left of your joyous city? 1 second. Yep. Is this silent ruin all that is left of your once joyous city? Because we understand that the smoke of her torment shall ascend up unto heaven forever, right? What a long history was yours, right? We're still in this captivity. And we understand that 1,000 years is one day unto the Lord, and one day is as 1,000 years. Hey, but when you take a look at the time that we've suffered here, hey, it was a short history concern when you compare it to eternity, right? But nevertheless, Esau had a nice run, man. He had a nice run of conquering. It says, oops. 1 second, get back to it. It says, what a long history was yours. Think of all the colonists you sent to distant places. Who has brought this disaster on Tyre? The great creator of kingdoms? And we understand Yahweh Shai is going to come back, as the scriptures tell us here, right? To claim his throne and ultimately take the crowns off the kings of the earth's head. This is Revelation 19 and 12. And it reads, matter of fact, 11, and I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. Right? And that's not saying we don't know their name. Ultimately, Yahweh Shai has a rank, right? And on top of that rank, and the respect given back unto that name, his name will also be afreshed, right? As the truth was once taken from us, the Lord has put the spirit back on his men, right? Starting with his men to call upon the true name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. Now, when we go back here to the 8th verse, it says, who has brought this disaster on Tyre? That great creator of kingdoms. Her traders were all princes. Her merchants were all, it's like her traders were all princes. Her merchants were nobles. So what is this exactly going into? Well, when you dig into the history of Tyre, right? Those who had financial, I want to say stability, who had a financial leg up, I'll say, that's a better way to say it. Money ultimately ruled this city, right? The rich were the powerful. And guess what? They didn't care about how they got those riches, right? If it was by corruption, those were ultimately the ones who made the laws. Those were the ones who set forth bounds or unrighteous decrees, right? As the scriptures talk about the gain. Matter of fact, let's go back here. One second. Yeah. When we look at this chat, right? It says Tyre became a symbol of wealth, pride, commercial power, self-sufficiency, apart from the Most High. The prophets frequently warned Tyre because of its what? Its arrogance. Isaiah prophesied the downfall of Tyre, calling it the crowning city whose merchants were princes. Watch. Let's put in this this verse here. Because the rich controlled everything, man. See, says Isaiah is describing Tyre at the height of its power, a wealthy international trading center, a city whose merchants were treated like royalty, a source of influence that helped establish colonies and commercial networks across the Mediterranean. The prophecy emphasizes human wealth cannot prevent judgment, economic power does not make a nation invincible, and that's why we see in the book of Jeremiah how the scripture tells us, sit down in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon, there is no throne. Because what? Pride often precedes downfall, as the scriptures say. Pride goes before destruction, right? Pride goes before destruction. It says each became powerful, wealthy, and influential, yet each was eventually humbled. So these merchant men, these princes, or it's like these merchants, these traders, they were seen just like how you look at people in higher socioeconomic levels today. They can do no wrong. They got their gain, so now they have the quality of life. They were ultimately worshipped on a pedestal from those who didn't have it. Just like today, a quote unquote celebrity or a person with money or high social status in this world, hey, people here in Babylon are great. Hey, they'll listen to them. They'll take their advice. They'll go far and beyond, to not only try to get in their shoes, but to hear them out. The Lord of Heaven's army has done it to do what? To destroy your pride and bring low all earth's nobility. So those who were in that what? High social status, those who had rank, those who had some type of power, whether it was government or any other type of political, arm, right? And we see the same thing in Babylon the Great. And this was the 70 years that I was speaking of here. It says, for 70 years, verse 15, for 70 years, the length of a king's life, Tyre will be forgotten, but then the city will come back to life, as in the song about the prostitute, right? And because we understand Tyre was conquered by the Assyrians and the Babylonians, then later it was conquered by Alexander the Great, right? And this is the same Tyre, King Hiram, came from the same Hiram that sent forth those supplies unto King David, man. Right? And it's beautiful because you see the parallels of how it rose, right? How it got rich through ungodly gain, and ultimately how that pride, brought forth a destruction unto them. Matter of fact, this is one of the precepts I want to bring out, Ezekiel the 16th chapter, because we understand, we quoted Revelation 11, right? Showing you the parallels or the spiritual parallels between Sodom and Egypt. Well, this is another connection. We could say Sodom, Egypt, Tyre, Babylon, right? When you read the 69th verse, it's like the 49th verse, it says, behold, this was thy iniquity of thy sister Sodom. Pride, number one, the scriptures talk about how the Most High hates what a proud look, right? Sodom, pride, fullness of bread, right? And abundance of idleness. Fullness of bread is gluttony. It says pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her and in her daughters, those neighboring cities. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy, right? Hey, that's why even in this country, hey, you can get a ticket or go to jail for feeding the homeless, right? Meanwhile, the gluttony here is rampant to the point where you have people who have social media accounts on what you call mukbangs, man, or where they're just eating an influx of food, and to the point where you know they're not finishing it. It's just to create content and get paid off of it. That's gluttony, right? Pride. Let's go to this word pride. We're gonna bring up arrogance. We're gonna bring up a mind adverse unto Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. H13:47 says pride, exaltation, right? Pride, arrogance in a bad sense. The majesty, the pomps, the arrogancy of nations, their wealth, power, magnificence of buildings. Let's see if there's any more. Pride in a bad sense. That's the point. Let's get back to this. Yeah, this verse 10, it says, "Come, people of Tarshish, sweep over the land like the flooding Nile, for Tyre is defenseless and is beautiful," because we understand another parallel. When we go into the book of Ezekiel, the 30, I believe it's the 37th chapter. No, so like the 38th chapter. Said 37th. Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. We go here into the 11th verse, and it reads, "And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages," which is speaking of who? Babylon the Great. "I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates." Right, and this is speaking about the destruction, ultimately, which Gog and Magog will bring him. It's also speaking about, the hooks being put into the jaws of the Russians as the Soviet spirit returns into them, because they're going to be one of the main, what's the word? Adverse nations, right? The opposite of ally. I can't think of the word right now. Right, but one of the main nations that not only protects the smaller nations of Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, but is going to be one of those nations that shoot upon her and spares no arrows. So let's go back to Isaiah 23. It says, "The Lord held out his hand over the sea and shook the kingdoms of the earth. He has spoken out against Phoenicia, ordering that her fortress be destroyed," right? "And it's the Lord's pleasure to bring forth judgment unto Babylon the Great." It says, he says, "Never again will you rejoice, O daughter of Zidon, for you have been crushed," right? "Even if you flee to Cyprus, you will find no rest. Look at the land of Babylonia. The people of that land are gone. The Assyrians have handed Babylon over to the wild animals of the desert. They have built siege ramps against its walls, torn down its palaces, and turned it into a heap of rubble. Wail, you ships of Tarshish, for your harbor is destroyed," right? And it sounds very similar to that Revelation 18 chapter that we read. "For 70 years, the length of a king's life, Tyre will be forgotten, but then the city will come back to life, as in the song about the prostitute." Now we understand Babylon won't be built up out of the ruins after this. Once it's destroyed, that's what it is. Because the next kingdom to rule will be the kingdom of Yasharallah, man, starting with Yahweh, Yahushai, King David, the 12, and the rest of the elect. It says, "Take a harp and walk the streets, you forgotten harlot," right? "Make sweet melody and sing your songs, so you will be remembered again," right? And this place is going to be as to us unto a dream, man, right? Yes, after 70 years, the Lord will revive Tyre, but she will be no different than she was before. She will again be a prostitute to all kingdoms of the world, right? And as the scriptures say, America has passed that cup, that wine of her fornication, into all these nations. It was the great whore, right? Is this not the whore that rideth the beast? Right? It says, "But in her end, her prophets will be given to the Lord, as the scriptures speak about what the forces of the Gentiles shall be brought back unto Jake, man, back into the kingdom of Yasharallah, into the body, the governments, like it says, but in the end, her prophets will be given to the Lord, right? They'll bring their spoils unto who? Unto us. Her wealth will not be hoarded, but will provide good food and fine clothing for the Lord's priests. Ultimately, the Lord is setting up what for the priests of us, like a nation of kings and priests, man. Right. And that's who the elect, that governing body, will be. So as reading through that, I just want to, show forth or highlight some of those parallels of Tyre compared to Babylon the Great, man, America. Because it's evident, right? This is why this is why the saying history repeats itself is so important, because you see America's pride and the gluttony, the sin, the bloodshed, the what's the word? When you don't have a care for anything, or when you feel as if you're so high that nothing can touch you. You see all these different facets of the spirit of Tyre back today, man. The rich ruling, so forth and so on, right? Those that have money, be without harm or can bypass what you call it, punishment. This was all done here as well. So that's the point. Not to make the lesson, an hour long, even though it's half hour, but Lord willing, this lesson was edifying unto the body. I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakah HaKodash. And double honors unto the apostles and elders of GMS Great Millstone, and a sincere shalom to Yakim, bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. Shalom.